Bibles, turn to Ezekiel chapter 8. Let's stand together. Ezekiel chapter 8. Ezekiel chapter 8. Let's all stand. I want to encourage everybody to do this. Now, this is right now. Let's see, we're at January 29th. This is tax return time. Everybody's already got your tax. I hear people, I'm going to do this with my tax return. I'm going to do this with my tax return. I think it was Bruce told me, he said, college students get all their college money back. If you pay for your college, most people they get grants and they get scholarships. You say, what do our kids get? Nothing. They pay for it, okay? And so, is that right? He said President Obama's been good to us. We get most all of our college money back. Okay? Now, I want to encourage us. Why don't you take some of that money and invest into church bonds? Thank you, Brother Robert, for those 3 amens. It would be great. Maybe you're going to get 5,000. Why don't you take 1,000? So you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to take this, and this will be for my son when he goes to college. This will be. Say, well, I don't need any savings. Well, save it anyway. You get the interest, and you get it back later. But we still have a bunch of bonds to sell. I want you to consider that. Consider that. And my wife, we're going to do that. We're going to buy a bunch of bonds with the $275 we get back for tax money. Okay, Ezekiel chapter 8. Ezekiel chapter 8. Let's look at verse number 1. Ezekiel chapter 8, verse number 1. Of course, Ezekiel is the book of Ezekiel. Much of it is the prophet speaking to God's people that have already been taken captive. Jeremiah warned God's people so they didn't have to go into captivity. By the way, aren't you glad that God warns us before he puts the belt on us? God's always warning us. Look, I don't like to spank my kids. Man, I was spanking Timothy just last night. You say, Pastor, when do you quit spanking your kids? I've said this. My pastor, seriously, my first pastor, Pastor Larry Webb, he said he got his last spanking when he was 19. So I'm afraid my 19-year-old would grab that belt and put it on me. But God is he's always working in our lives. He don't want to spank us. He don't want to hurt us. By the way, you say, well, why do you spank? What's the thing about spanking? Because pain works on everybody. Okay? I've told somebody once, I was telling a dad, I said, look, man, you need to spank your son. It'll be good. It's what he needs. He needs a spanking. And I realized, he's about 12 or 13. I said, that's what he needs. I said, look, if I'm doing something and I'm not changing it and someone says, I'm going to spank you if you don't quit, I'm going to quit it. I'm 51 years old. You spank me, I'll quit it. I don't want to get spanked. That's just the way it works. But now Ezekiel is he points out here there's 3 great abominations. Abomination is just something real bad. There's 3 great abominations we see here in Ezekiel chapter 8. Okay, and we're gonna see the 3 great abominations. Look at Ezekiel 8, verse number 1. And it came to pass in the 6th year, in the 6th month, in the 5th day of the month, as I sat in mine house, and the elders of Judah sat before me, that the hand of the Lord God fell there upon me. Then I beheld, and lo, a likeness as the appearance of fire, from the appearance of his loins even downward fire, and from his loins even upward as the appearance of brightness is the color of amber. And he put forth the form of a hand, and took me by a lock of mine head, and the Spirit lifted me up. The earth, the Spirit lifted me up between the earth and the heaven, and brought me in the visions of God to Jerusalem, to the door of the inner gate. Okay, the door of the inner gate that looketh towards the north. This is outside the temple. The inner gate that looked toward the north, where was the seat of the image of jealousy, which provoketh to jealousy. He saw outside by the gate, the inner court, he saw an image. Verse 4, and behold, the glory of the God of Israel was there, according to the vision that I saw in the plain. Then said he unto me, Son of man, lift up thine eyes now the way toward the north. So I lifted up mine eyes the way toward the north, and behold, northward was at the gate of the altar of the image of jealousy in the entry. He said, furthermore, unto the Son of man, seest thou what they do, even great abominations, that the house of Israel committeth there, that I should go far off from my sanctuary, but turn thee yet again, and thou shalt see greater. He said the first abomination, and we'll pray, and we'll be seated. Let me say this. He said the first abomination was a great abomination, and what it was is it's just real simple. Sinning in the open. They were out there by the outer, right there by the gate. They're outside of the temple. They said they're just sinning right out there. Okay? And he said that's not the greatest. There's going to be 3 different abominations. The first was just public sin. Sinning out in front of everybody. Father, help us as we look at what bothers our God. But then what really bothers our God. But then what really, really bothers our God. Lord, none of us want to be bothered. And none of us as Christians should want to bother anybody. But we're God's children. And none of us should ever do anything to bother our God. And help us tonight to get insight from your word and apply it to our lives. In Jesus' name, amen. Be seated. The great abomination, not the greatest, the great abomination that Ezekiel was talking about was open sin. Now we're going to see there was a greater abomination, and then there was another even greater abomination, but just open sin. Open sin. You say like what? Gay pride parade. Not being in the closet, but the gay pride parade. Christians out in front of a bar. He's got his Bible, but he's out there drinking out in front of the bar. You can't. Can you smoke in bars? I don't think you can smoke in bars anymore. Do you got any guys? Some of you guys help me now. Come on. You can't? How do you know, Cody? Can't smoke in bars. So here we are. We're driving down the street on Anaheim, and we see Brother Charlie. By the way, they hired him to make announcements in the bar. And there's Brother Charlie. He's drinking a Budweiser in front of everybody. You know what the Lord says? That's an abomination of God. Here's a Christian girl. She knows that God gave her body as a sacred trust for her future husband. But she puts her blouse on so tight so that men look at her. Come on, guys, don't leave me up here by myself. That's a great abomination. By the way, girls, thank you, ladies, for being modest at Pacific Baptist. And let me say this, dads, when your daughters start getting old enough, okay, you just be real nice. I have 3 daughters. I've had to talk to all 3 of the daughters. Let me just say this, many times. Many times. I think a lot of times they don't know. Sometimes it's just on the edge, okay? But you know what's God says a great abomination? When a girl dresses to turn heads. Turn heads. That's a great abomination. An abomination to God is when people just have public sin, they don't care, they walk down the street, they curse, they turn their music on, and they have dirty, rotten, gangster rap music on, blow their window down, blow the music out. That's great abomination. But God goes on to say there's a greater abomination. The first abomination, which is a great abomination, is just open public sin. By the way, we're Christians. We should never sin. Now, we're going to sin. Sin is missing the mark. We're try. But we shouldn't just go out and, I don't care what anybody says. Listen, we're the light of the world. We're God's ambassadors. We ought to care what people say. Let's look at the second. You say, what's the greater? He says the great. Then he says a greater. Then he's going to go on. He doesn't say greatest, but then he's even a greater than the second. See, what's the second? Please get this. Hidden sin. Hidden sin. Now look, we're not supposed to sin. But if there's a sin worse than another sin, God says it's hidden sin. Father, I heard this, Brother Ray, actually, I was preparing this message, and you gave me that message again, and I turned it on because there's some statistics on pornography, and this was the text the guy used. And listened to two messages on the internet and the pornography, one by Brother Owens, and one, I don't know who the guy is. But one of them said this, that Satan's weapon of mass destruction in this day and age is the internet. The internet. Look at Ezekiel chapter 8. Look at verse number 6. He said, furthermore unto me, son of man, seest thou what they do? Even the great abomination that the house of Israel committeth here, that I should go far off from thy sanctuary. But turn thee yet again, and thou shalt see greater. Can you say greater? Greater. So he's comparing this next abomination to the last. He said, that was great, this is greater. And he brought, verse 7, and he brought me to the door of the court, and when I looked, behold, a hole in the wall. There was a hole in the wall. Then he said unto me, Son of man, dig now in the wall. And when I had digged in the wall, behold, a door. You know, God was saying, they're doing something behind that wall. By the way, God sees behind every wall. God sees what's going on in every bedroom and in every closet and what's going on every internet, website, chat room. I don't know what chat rooms are, but all the time when I hear about chat rooms, it's not good. Now, I'm not saying chat rooms are sinful. I don't think they're sinful, and if they are, then they are. But there's something. I like what Brother Owen said. He said, do you know what the technology we have has done? It's made it easy to sin. Easy to sin. By the way, this day and age, we don't need it to be easy to sin. We are already bent. I don't mean we as a church, but this culture and this society and really this world, there's such weak Christians, we don't need it easy to sin. But what he says, you know what they're doing? This group was out in the court, out in the gate, right out in the open. They were sinning. They were blasting their junky music, and they were out there cursing, and they were doing this and that. But this group, look in that hole, sort of bust that hole open, look at, they're sinning behind closed doors. Let's look on. Verse 7, and he brought me to the door of the court, and when I looked, behold, a hole in the wall. By the way, God doesn't need to look at the hole in the wall. He knows what's going on without even drilling a hole. Then said he, verse 8, unto me, Son of man, dig now in the wall. And when I had digged in the wall, behold a door. And he said unto me, Go in and behold the wicked abomination that they do here. So I went and saw, and behold, every form of creeping things and abominable beasts and all the idols of the house of Israel portrayed upon the wall around about. And there stood before them 70 men of the ancients of the house of Israel, and in the midst of them stood Jezniah, the son of Shaphan, with every man his censer in his hand, and a thick cloud of incense went up. They were actually right there in the sanctuary. They were worshiping false gods. Hidden sin for a Christian. I mentioned recently someone, they don't go to this church. I was talking to him on the phone. And he said, yeah, my old girlfriend tried to be my friend on Facebook. By the way, I don't know exactly what that means. I think I know what it means. And but his old friend. I mean, this guy's up in his 50s. His old girlfriend from high school. Okay. You know, literally, if I understand this correctly, now of course I didn't have old girlfriends, but Brother Ross probably did. Brother Ross, if he remembers his old girlfriend, Smalley's out shopping. He says, by the way, don't give in to your sinful curiosity. You say, Pastor, why do you bring this up? You must have a dirty mind. I have the same mind you have. You say, Pastor, I don't know how to Google. I don't know how to Facebook. I do not know how to get online. But I've been tempted to, whatever that is, my old friends. Say, who are your old friends? You've been pastor for 23 years. I know. I'm thinking, I've been pastor for 23 years. I don't know who my old friends. I know who they are. I remember some of their names, but I don't need to be Googling up my old friends. So here's Brother Ross. He's going, you know what? It won't hurt anything. Maybe I'd like to witness to her. Listen, let somebody else witness to her in Boston. You know what you do? You pray for her. I want to witness to her. You know, no. You listen, we don't need to feed the flesh. By the way, I'm speaking to the right crowd because I'm not saying that we're just a bunch of sinners. And I know, listen, I like Brother Owen said, he says, I don't want to know how to do the internet. He says, I'm not doing Facebook or all that spacey stuff. I'm not doing that. This is what he said. He says, I'm not a good enough Christian. He said, I know if I had access to all that, he says, I just might be tempted to do something that I shouldn't do. If he says that, and if I say that, I'd say, Brother Ross ought to say that. Folks, we're like the king that has no clothes on, walking down the street, and he's showing off his nice new suit, which was nothing, and everyone's going, oh yeah. We need to wake up and realize that if we have, and I have internet in my house, but if we have internet in our house, we have a cobra that's poisonous. Now it's locked up, and we need to make sure that mom and dad have the key, and that mom can't get on there all by herself, and dad can't get on there all by himself. You said, why? Because what it does, it leads to that greater abomination, secret sins. I'm not done with you yet. Your wife is still at the supermarket. And now he's let me just Google her up. Listen, I'm not going to do anything wrong. Destruction in a life is always incremental. No one ever decided to destroy their life. No teenager ever decided to get hooked on some of these drugs. They say marijuana when I was a kid, I think they still say as an entrance drug. Is that right? What is it? Man, you know all that stuff, don't you? I ought to have you preach every once in a while. Did you say gateway? Gateway drug. Okay. So all I do is smoke marijuana. They just tell us this. Not for long. Not for long. I had a lady, she's not here in our church. She came to me and she said, she called me pastor. She said, Pastor, I think this is the right word. She said, she's married. She had, I think, 3 or 4 kids. She said, I got on a chat room. Is that what's called, chat room? Chat line? And she said, I met a man. She's a married Christian lady. And she started crying. I'm going, oh. By the way, I don't get surprised anymore. I don't know if that's to my shame or I don't know if my heart's getting hard. I guess if you see something so many times, you just sort of get used to it. And she said, I met a guy on a chat room or a chat line, and we were just talking. Just talking. Just talking. She fast forwarded and she said, by the way, nobody caught her. People think I'm a Catholic priest sometimes. They want to get it off their back. I remember a guy, you admitted to me, he came and he said, man, and he starts crying. I said, what's wrong? Actually, the guy just came to our church and said, hey, we used to live next to the church. And I said, why don't you come over for a meal? And he just starts bawling. I said, man, what's wrong? And he said, I didn't mean to do it. We weren't talking about anything you did. And then he said, I didn't mean to kill him. I'm like, I'm out of here, man. I don't want to be a witness. He said, they made me do it while I was in prison. He says, if it wasn't them, it was me. I'm like, you're out of here, man. No, I treated him real nice. The guy's killing people, right? And she said, it was just a friendly chat or whatever. And she said, he drove down here and I met him. And she said, Pastor, all I did was kiss him. Stay off the chat lines. Public sin is hard. Private sin is easy. Public sin is easier to stop. Private sin is almost impossible to stop. Private sin is very contagious. It metastasizes. It spreads real fast. You say, why? Because you think, and we're going to see here, they were saying God doesn't see us. God sees everything, but when you're in private, you almost think God can't see you. By the way, accountability is important for everybody. I want people watching me. My flesh doesn't want people watching me. But I do. You say, why? It helps me to be a better Christian. It helps me to be a better husband. It helps me to be a better pastor. It helps me to be a better father. It helps me to be a better neighbor. The greater abomination was hidden sin for Christians. Probably the biggest confession of sins that have come my way. Sometimes it's a man that's been involved with pornography. I've had teenage boys involved with pornography. Always the internet. No one has, do they sell pornographic magazines anymore? You know, the thing about pornography before, you used to have to, if you bought it, you'd have to sort of put a hat on and put some fake glasses on and put a fake mustache on. And if you go to some dirty bookstore, you had to sort of look around. Now it's in your bedroom. Greater abomination are hidden sins. By the way, it's not just pornography, but pornography is the biggest. Pornography is the biggest. And I'm going to say this, if you're a single man and if you are messing around with pornography, you need to get help. And I'm going to say this, dads, and I've said this and I'll say it over and over. If there's a young man that's interested in your daughter, you look him in the eye and you say, have you ever been, by the way, you say, have you ever been involved with pornography? And if he flinches, say, see you in 6 months. Because, sir, you're single, if you're involved with pornography and you get married, you're going to ruin your marriage. Come on, guys, help me. Getting married never helped anybody that was addicted to pornography. All it did was messed up some lady. Another thing is this, all the gossip on Facebook. Can I say this? I mentioned somebody, some preacher once here behind the pulpit, and a good man in our church. He sent me a long email. Did you know that this preacher did this, and this? By the way, just because it's on someone's Facebook account does not mean that someone did this, and this. By the way, just because there's somebody that has an agenda to smear somebody's name, and they're smearing somebody's name, and they've got little pieces that they've exaggerated in their life. By the way, how would you like your name and someone to put a microscope on your life and they put it on the internet? Don't believe everything you see on there. Oh, Pastor, do you know something? All I know is what people bring to me. I don't know how to do all that stuff. That one guy called me. He says, hey, well, he doesn't go to our church. He says, just got to let you know about somebody in your church. And they started telling me a bunch of junk that somebody put on one of those, I don't know, Facebook or whatever it is. I said, it's a lie. I said, and I told the guy, I said, it's a lie. I said, quit believing everything you see on someone's Facebook account. By the way, I knew it was a lie. He didn't. Brother Ron Williams is the godliest man I know. Godliest man I know. Ron Williams, the founder of Hebzibah House. Now I think I want to say it's about 40 years. Hebzibah House is a girls' home. We've sent a few girls there. Godly man, I want to say 10, 11, 12 children. All godly children. Good, I mean, strong, good Bible preacher. I've got a bunch of his messages, his material. There's a couple girls that were sent by their parents to the girls' home. And they went home and they got mad at Brother Ron Williams. And now they got their little web network of disgruntles trying to discredit this godly man. By the way, get off all that junk. Quit listening to all that gossip. By the way, look, if I love Cody and I believe in him and all of a sudden I start listening to somebody that doesn't know what they're talking about and they start bad-mouthing him, you know what? I'm going to change my view of him and I don't even know it. I don't even need to hear any. First of all, it's none of my business. If he's a leader of the church, it's some of my business. Let's quit listening to the scuttlebutt that's on the internet. And and these girls are trying to they've got CNN involved. They got and by the way, all the news, they love all the juice. And there's this real intelligent guy, Brother Ron Williams was at church. He was preaching in North Carolina. Just a godly man. And he was preaching, he just mentioned, I think, a little bit about what's been happening. And there's a godly man. I mean, this guy's like a rocket scientist. He said, you know what? I'm going to check this preacher out, and I'm going to come to his defense. And he checked out on, he did, and actually I sent it to our pastoral staff. I said, look, you guys read this, because we live in a day and age where everybody wants to slander and hurt somebody's name. And the man that I probably respect more than just about anybody on this earth, a bunch of girls have gotten together. And by the way, girls, now they got adults and now they got CNN trying to slander this man's name. And he is as innocent as the Apostle Paul. Stay away from that stuff. But this guy, he from a biblical perspective showed on how can you, and he checked into these girls' lives, and how can you take these girls and what they're saying as the gospel. Anyway, I won't go into all that. Hidden sin. So Ezekiel first he says the first sin, a great abomination is public sin. Listen, let's be right and clean in the public. Folks, if you hurt one of your neighbors, don't bump your neighbor's car with your car and nobody's looking around and don't tell them. Come on, we're God's people. We ought to, listen, by the way, if you're at the supermarket and you bump somebody's car, put a note on the windshield and give them your license. Don't look left and look right and take off. Come on, we're Christians. Okay? Brother Pineda said at church too. Public sin. And then there's private sin is a greater abomination. And then last is the greatest abomination. You say, what is the greatest abomination? Christian leaders hiding their sin. Christian leaders hiding their sin. Christian leaders hiding their sin. By the way, I sin. Sin is missing the mark. I try not to sin, but I sin. And I confess. And I forsake. And then I sin again. And I confess. And I forsake. Let me say this. You do not have I'll look you and I've never, now when I was a little kid, teenagers, they got little dirty magazines, passed them around. But as your pastor, 23 years, I've never looked on an internet website looking at pornography. Never. Never. And I don't get online and chat with old friends. And I'm not going to get involved with some gossip. All of a sudden, Brother Kyle Beck's principal honeymoon is over. By the way, I probably shouldn't say this, but I get paid to say things I shouldn't say. Every once in a while, some people send some of the chats that some of our young people, young adults, some of the teenagers, the young adults are chatting and disrespecting other people. That's when I sin. I want to get in the flesh. By the way, do you know what you put online and what you put on? It's public access. And you might think that they're passing it around. I don't want you to pass it to me. Sometimes it comes and I get in the flesh too. By the way, some of you guys, the way you say, well, I wonder what you know. We know a lot more than you think. And by the way, God knows everything. Let me just say this. If you're a member of this church, you should never say anything bad about our church. Some of these guys getting online, you're a member of this church, and you got saved in this church, you got baptized in this church, and you have teachers that have loved you and taught you, and you have a youth pastor that taught you, and then you come and criticize. Shame on you. You come to the church like, oh, well, no, you ought to be ashamed of yourself. Oh, Pastor, you mad? I'm mad at the devil. I'm mad at sin. God called it great abomination. None of us here, listen, none of us here, Brother Pineda, my son, Brother Ross, myself, none of these men, none of us are perfect. We love God and we love you. We're trying to help you. Don't try to hurt our names. By the way, if you have something to say, come say it to us. If I'm doing something wrong, I want to know it. I want to ask you to forgive me. Don't go and criticize the church and criticize the staff and criticize a deacon and criticize a teacher. Shame on us. You say, is a lot of that going around? No, but some of it's going around. You're in your bedroom and shooting this off. You don't know one of those people you're shooting off is a spy against you. We're Christians. It breaks my heart that what's happening out in the world, unsaved people, we're getting caught into that. If I had my choice, and I know there's more access to internet in this building, and if I had my choice, if we can do it, I'd have a church split. All the staff would leave on me. I'd say no more internet. And I'd start a campaign, no more internet. No more internet. Cell phones. Can you see your cell phone? Oh, you gave my wife the cell phone. Thank you. She told me that the other day. She said, Brother Ross gave me this. We'd be a lot better if all we had was that phone hanging in the kitchen. You say, why? There used to be a day and age when there's the phone. Someone's calling me. David Lucero. Dave, you're fired. There used to be a day. By the way, you say, I'm a visitor. I don't know all this stuff. Thank you for your innocence. If you're going, man, I don't know what this crazy preacher's doing. Thank you that you're innocent. Used to be a day and age, you have the phone, Chan him. Now everybody's calling me. Got the phone on the kitchen. And if your wife goes to the phone, she's right there. You know what you do? You start walking a little closer to the kitchen. You move over, you go. This thing right here, texting. Texting. Look, my daughter, Sarah's, oh, you're 21? And by the way, I'm not a fair, who is this now? Ryan Rawl. Thank you. I'm not a good Christian. And by the way, I'm like Brother Owens. The reason I don't want my kid, you say, well, Pastor, are you suspicious of Sarah? I'm suspicious of everybody, including myself. I don't trust myself. My daughter's 21 years old. Personally, I know I can be opinionated. Personally, I think she's one of the best Christian young ladies I know. She cannot have a cell phone. Now, probably in the next month, I'm gonna get her. We're gonna let her have one because Jazz is gonna be out of the office. But I'll say this, if your kids have cell phones, say, what about Susanna? Long ways away, you're only 20 or 19. Say, what about your boys? I don't care about my boys. Look at Ezekiel chapter 8, verse 11. Oh, you're always getting on that cell phone and technology. Please don't get this wrong. I know more about cell phone and internet heartbreak than anybody in this church. Now, you know some. I know a lot. The reason I get passionate about it is because you don't know what I know. By the way, I can't tell you everything I know. You might want to just trust a 51-year-old pastor that might listen. I'm not better in mechanics than you. I'm not. We have police officers in the church. I'm not better at a gun than you. I'm not better at investigating. But I'll tell you what. In this subject, I'm better than you. Ezekiel chapter 8, verse number 11. And there stood before them 70 men of the ancients of the house of Israel, leaders. In the midst of them stood Jezaniah the son of Shaphan, with every man his censer in his hand, and a thick cloud of incense went up. Then said he unto me, Son of man, hast thou seen what the ancients of the house of Israel do in the dark? Who are the ancients? These are the leaders. In the dark, every man in the chambers of his imagery. For they say, the Lord seeth us not. Oh, yes, he does. The Lord hath forsaken the earth, they say. He said also unto me, Turn thee yet again, and thou shalt see greater abominations than they do. Then he brought me to the door of the gate of the Lord's house, which was towards the north, and behold, there sat a woman weeping for Tammuz. Then said he unto me, Hast thou seen this, O son of man? Turn thee yet again, and I will show you greater abomination than these. And he brought me into the inner court of the Lord's house. And behold, at the floor of the temple of the Lord, between the porch and the altar, were about 25 men with their backs towards the temple of the Lord, and their faces towards the east, and they worshiped the sun toward the east. These leaders were literally worshiping the Lord in the temple. Worshiping a false god, worshiping the sun in the temple. Then he said unto me, Hast thou seen this, O son of man? Is it a light thing to do, or light thing to the house of Judah, that they commit the abominations which they commit here? For they have filled the land with their violence, and have returned to provoke me to anger. And lo, they put the branch to their nose, therefore will I also deal in fury. Mine eyes shall not spare, neither will I have pity. And though they cry in mine ears with a loud voice, yet will I not hear them. Look up here just a moment. James, you don't need to turn there, but James chapter 3, verse 1. Be not many masters, knowing that we shall receive the greater condemnation. That's what God is saying. You know, he's saying, I'm not going to have pity on you leaders. By the way, no leader in here is perfect. None of us are far from being perfect. That is not what God is asking. But you know what God is saying? No secret sins. No secret sins. Listen, your heart is polluted when you're involved with secret sins. By the way, mom and dad, if you have children, you're a leader. You're a leader. No secret sins. We as leaders at Pacific Baptist Church, you know what we need to do? We need to strive to be holy people. If you teach a Sunday school class, you need to strive to be a holy person. Let me say this. You're in the choir, and I know that's not you're not teaching, but when you're in the choir, I'll never forget. I was about 15. I wasn't serving the Lord. I may have been saved. I was about 15 years old, on the corner of South and Cherry. Many of you know where South and Cherry is. I don't know what the church is, but it was an Assembly of God. Let me know where South and Cherry is. There's a church there, but it was called the Assembly of God. And I went there. Someone invited me. I can't remember what it was. I went there, and I saw one of the girls I went to school with in the choir. This was an adult choir. She's about 15, 16 years old, and I'm going, you know what it did? It just threw me off. It just threw me off. I would hope to the Lord that there's nobody out here when there's a choir member coming up here and they go, come on now. By the way, I don't know anybody. And I don't mean the choir members have to be perfect, but we're singing for God. We're coming up here, and we're here again. We're not saying that we're not going to sin, we're not going to trip, but I would hope to the Lord that there's not a visitor saying, "Who? You've got to be kidding me. I saw them with this. I saw them, or I was with them." If there's a staff member that's doing something private around here, I don't want to know all the gossip, but if you know something about a staff member, we want to know about it. By the way, thank God we haven't had that problem with staff. Amen? Let me give us a few thoughts. Have high standards with your technology, with your family. As He's showing us here, He's saying, listen, public sin is bad, but private sin is worse. But even worse than that is private sin with leaders, because leaders, you are influencing your children and you're influencing God's people. It's that private. You say, where is most of private sin going on today, Pastor? In that computer. By the way, it's not just computer, television. I like Brother Trieber said. Brother Trieber said he said he preaches a lot out. He says one time he was in a hotel while I was preaching out, and he said something. He was switching channels, and he probably came, and I've done it. Came across, maybe it was an R-rated movie or something, and the girls were half dressed, or maybe they had no clothes on. He said that day he made a commitment to his wife, the Lord. He said, I will never watch television when I go in a hotel. And I think to this day, when he goes to a hotel a lot, he will never turn a television on. I heard about a preacher, you know what he does? As soon as he goes to the hotel, when he preaches, you know what he does? First thing he does, he says, you guys got to take the TV out of my room. They're like, what? TV goes out. Now, I'm not that good of a Christian, okay? But I don't want to be sitting around watching, and not at my house, we don't have cable television, but I don't want to be sitting around watching television and flipping around. Nobody's around. But have high standards with technology with your family. No internet with the family without accountability. And I'm going to say this. I know it just like anything else. Anything that we do for a long time, we let our guard down. Get that new car. Okay, no Coca-Colas, no anything in the car. The only things in the car are sanitized people. Take your shoes off when you come in the car. Now, you can have shakes and you have pizza and, there's the McDonald's. It's all smashed in the back. We first got that internet, hey, listen, there's got to be 5 people here, and we've got to have cloud care and Christian care, and there's got to be, and 6 months later, it's like, well, listen, as long as you pray before you turn it on. I know our human nature. We let our guard down. You say, oh, Pastor, you don't trust your kids, you don't trust your wife, you don't trust. Listen, it might not be a trust issue. Let's just do this. Let's just keep each other accountable. And by the way, I don't trust my kids. Number 2, spouses welcome spouse-to-spouse accountability without getting all huffy and puffy. Welcome spouse-to-spouse accountability without getting all, you don't trust me? By the way, giving accountability to each other is what really encourages trust. Okay? My phone, to this day, I've never got on a website. The only websites I got on is the ones my children will put on there. Their sermons, and they put it on there. I forget what you call them. They put it on my thing there, and I put the arrow. To this day, I have a computer. I get on websites because they have the little, what do you call that? icon, whatever. Say, oh, Pastor, you're dumb. I know that. But I think I know how to do it. I never have. I hope that I can, and I haven't made a vow to God or a vow to my wife or a vow to anybody. I hope I never do. You say, why? It's probably good for my children. It's probably also good for the church. Have high standards with technology with your family. No, excuse me. Have spouses welcome spouse-to-spouse accountability. Phones. Leave your phone around for your husband and just look at it. Oh, who does he think I'm calling? Well, how come you're getting all nervous? Let your wife have your, what's it called, password? Password. Matter of fact, it'd probably be good if I won't go into that. I already lost like half the church already. Folks, I really believe this 50 years from now, there's going to be books written about the history of Christianity saying the black plague of Christianity was technology during our era. It's horrible. I promise you, 75% of the heartbreak in this church, I don't mean out there, I don't mean the other church, and I'm probably reflects our church is what's going on in other churches, and we don't have a bunch of it, but we have some. Probably 75% of the heartbreak would be gone if we had no internet and no cell phones. Cell phone just makes it easy for us to sin. Internet makes it easy, and now we have internet on our cell phones. Ooh, that Amish community just looks good. Now, I'm going to say this next one, and I'm John the Baptist preaching a voice in the wilderness. But I'm going to keep saying it. Teens don't need cell phones. By the way, I've been preaching this a long time. My pastor friends used to not preach it. Now they're all preaching it. I didn't preach it after it all happened. Maybe I was a little bit of a prophet. I thought it might happen. But now they're saying, you know what? All the teens don't need to. Oh, well, you don't trust them? Absolutely not. And now I even trust them less now that I know what's going on. You say, well, what if an emergency comes up? Get someone. Listen, there used to be a day it was an emergency. You got to run over and find a payphone. If an emergency comes up, if your teenagers don't have a cell phone, they can get someone else has a cell phone. Because nobody's going to do this anyway. This is just a commercial. Okay? By the way, this is not the gospel. This is a standard. We understand, Brother Kyle explained it pretty clear. Standard helps us to keep our convictions. How high are your standards? Teens don't need cell phones. Oh, well, she doesn't have to do anything. She can do what we used to do when we didn't have cell phones. Go get someone else's. By the way, it'll save you. You're paying for it, Mom. Pigeons? Oh, get pigeons. By the way, here's another one. And here again, I'm getting this off my chest. I'm going in and out afterwards. Well, you have a pastor that loves you. I'm brokenhearted. There's some, oh, you're talking about me. That's the sad part. I'm not talking about you. There's a bunch. The little thing about the singles and everybody's gossiping and everything. There's about 20 singles got real nervous. I wonder if he knows. Probably if I said, listen, come up to my office, let's get it right, I'd have a line like 30 people. You know what the main thing is? If we just walk with God, we don't have to worry about it. Walking with God, when that computer starts saying things, you're like, you know what? I'm going to get rid of my computer. I don't even want to get close to sin. Here's another one. Here we go. Teens don't need Facebook. By the way, we have people that have Facebook for advertisement and so forth. Well, but my son, he doesn't need Facebook. I'm going to be gone in a minute. I wish I was an evangelist. I go on to the next church. My wife doesn't have Facebook. I don't know much about Facebook, but what I do know, it's not very good. Oh, but I don't want to be a part of something where we've never, but everybody else has, and I might. Okay? But teenagers, by the way, I know there's, well, I want to have my friends. And someone one time, and I'm going, all right, show me this Facebook there. Look, Pastor, trust me. You see here, this is a good guy here. But this guy, his friends are a little shady. And then his friends are real shady. They got us, I've said this, and I heard this somewhere. We are 7 people away from knowing anybody in this world. I was going to say Saddam Hussein, but we're 7 people away from anybody in this world. So you go about 2 or 3 friends deep. You got guys, girls, no clothes on. Well, I didn't give you the statistics about how many girls show their body. I mean, it's filthy. Teens, no cell phones, Facebook. Visitors, please forgive me. I still love you. Keep the boys and girls away from each other. Say, man, where'd that go from computers? If you knew look, I learned this before I ever started the church. I learned about courtship. So what's courtship? Teenagers, don't get involved with a guy or girl until you're spiritually, mentally, emotionally, and financially ready to get married. And for most of us, you got to be like 45 to be there. There's a peak in a relationship, and if you start it too early, you're going to do something wrong. Trust me, I know what I'm talking about. Many girls, good girls, lost their purity. You say, why? They got involved with a relationship way too early. Okay? And a 15-year-old does not know how to control herself or himself. Okay? Well, by the way, I have pastor friends. They have Valentine banquets for the junior hires. More power to them. We're not having Valentine banquets for the junior hires. Oh, well, man, you guys, we're trying to do? We're trying to live for a holy God and be holy people and have holy hearts, and we're trying to protect our boys and our girls from immorality. I want all of my children to go to the wedding altar pure and clean. I don't care what everybody else is doing. I want yours to go to the wedding altar. What this is? I'm putting all these rules on. No, these are protection to help us. Look, man, I like the free spirit too. I like doing whatever I want, but not at the cost of bringing cancer in my life. Keep the boys and girls away from each other. By the way, please, if we have standards here at the church, and if they're higher, you don't have to have those, but don't criticize high standards. Don't criticize those. Look, I didn't come. I came from the hippie movement. I was with the surfer guys. That's my life. I grew up. We were just a bunch of free, everything. But that ain't any good. This isn't just something I grew up with. Keep the girls and boys and support us. Support us. Girls, just hang out with the girls, and you teenage boys, we're just friends. I get a little, just boys, you know what? Go punch each other out. Okay? Getting, the guys and teenage guys and teenage girls. Some of you you're a little bit. You don't need to have acquaintance, fine, but you don't need to be talking to girls all the time. Okay? My moms and dads, start them when they're Ben's age. Ben, you're 11? Just don't let them be hanging out with other 11-year-old girls. Okay? And I tell them, hey, guys, y'all like girls, okay? We want to like girls. Just have some self-control right now. Okay? Just have some self-control right now. We're trying to prevent catastrophe. We want the boys and the girls to go to the wedding altar pure. If we can keep them away from each other, okay? Then they're not secretly texting each other. Now they like each other. Now they got phone. Now they're addicted to texting each other. Okay, and now they're online Facebooking or each other. I don't know how they Facebook each other. Support our church and leaders' high standards. I better stop. Let's bow our heads for just a moment.